Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. We're revisiting the case of the Kansas moms, and of course, you see the photos up on the screen. Veronica Butler, to the left, age 27, and Jilian Kelley, age 39. Just an absolutely tragic case. And these five individuals now had their second court appearance yesterday in what has been known as the Kansas Moms case. And largely, they were in a group called God's Misfits. And as you read on the thumbnail, five misfits in one crowded courtroom hearing in Kansas Moms case. So the defendants that are accused of killing two Kansas moms appeared in court yesterday. As attorneys noted, a key piece of evidence is still missing from the discovery. The five suspects are accused of killing Veronica Butler and Jilian Kelley, two mothers who were driving from Kansas to Oklahoma for a supervised visit with Butler's children. At one point, this was yesterday, 9 deputies, 7 defense attorneys, and 3 prosecutors were present in the courtroom. All 5 defendants were also present in what the judge called a physical arrangement that is unprecedented in this courtroom's history and in this courthouse. The courtroom has been outfitted to accommodate all the defendants, using space in the jury box to sit all those who needed to be present. Tiffany Adams, 54, her boyfriend Tad Cullum, 43, Cora Twombly, 44, her husband Cole Twombly, 50, and Paul Grice are accused of conspiring to commit murder. Investigators say the killing stemmed from a bitter custody battle between Butler and Adams, the paternal grandmother of Butler's children. Defense attorneys complained to the judge about not having received evidence from the prosecution as part of the discovery process. There was also concern about the fact that this discovery would be coming from multiple agencies, including the FBI, which can be difficult in state cases. The defense attorneys expressed concerns that the lack of discovery would not give them enough time to review evidence prior to a preliminary hearing. The prosecutors noted that the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation is likely turning over 4 terabytes of discovery and will produce 2 terabytes prior to the preliminary hearing. One key piece of evidence that has not been received is the medical examiner's report on how the 2 women died. With both defense attorneys and prosecutors saying they did not have the final report, according to prosecutors, that information is expected in 2 to 3 weeks. So, folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your chair, hold on to your service dog, your wife, your children. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone. You're about to enter the police off-the-cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped in 10th and Ranch Michael Butler.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
Joining me today to present the updates on this very involved, very convoluted, complicated case will be retired NYPD Sergeant, attorney, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, and you all love and respect this man, Professor Michael Geary. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Hey, Billy, good to see you. Long time no see. Welcome, everyone.
About 12 hours ago.
Right.
So, Mike, 5 arrested for murder in the first degree.
Right.
A death penalty case. The amount of discovery, and for our listeners, discovery obviously is all the evidence that the prosecution has. must be turned over to the defense, and hopefully in a timely manner. However, there's multiple law enforcement agencies, and one of the agencies mentioned that is notorious for not turning things over in a timely manner is the FBI, and they seem to always get away with it. But the amount of evidence in this case is just voluminous. And when we look at these defendants up on the screen, Tiffany Adams' grandma, right, who is supposedly, if you can have a mastermind in this case, she is one. Paul Grice, who's the furthest one on the right. Tad Cullum, who was mom's boyfriend, the guy with that crazy-looking beard. Cole Twombly, all the way on the left with that crazy-looking mustache. And Cora Twombly, his wife. Now, Mike, you being an attorney, and if you were prosecuting this case, I would think that you would look to at least one of them to perhaps cut a deal. Your thoughts?
Well, you have to. You have this conspiracy. There's 5 people, and they're possibly involved in this group called God's Misfits. You want to break one of them. You want to crack one of them open. So you got to figure out who's the person who may have had the least involvement and have the least amount of criminal liability, if you want to measure that. And you got to figure who's got the most information that's going to be useful. So you're looking around, you see the Adams couple, you see the Twombly couple, and then you see Paul Grice all by himself over there. He's got at least 1 or 2 children, and he's younger than the Adams and the Twomblys. So maybe he might think he might be a little susceptible, a little vulnerable, and they may cut a deal with him. If I'm the prosecutor, that's who I'm looking for, because I want the inner workings. I want somebody to reveal to the jury at trial all the inner workings. What were the conversations that went on between everybody? Who's the first person that bridged that idea that we're going to do this? Who's pushing it? Who's buying all the supplies? We know certain things about grandma, but we don't know everything. So my bet, if I could be prosecuting that case, I want to concentrate on the youngest guy, the guy right there who's in his 30s. He's like a single dad. He's got 2 kids. I want him. Paul Grice, I think, to me, would be the best candidate to approach.
Mike, I just, not that I disagree with you, but what I want to know is not, according to who I'm going to cut a deal with, who actually didn't take part in the murders of these 2 women. And if anyone took part, that's absolutely a person or persons that I'm not going to offer any deal with. Right. Perhaps Cora Twombly didn't physically, and we don't know yet what the cause of death was, because the medical examiner report has yet to be released. So that would be a person or persons I would not even consider to cut a deal with. So Paul Grice, as you recall, he gave it up. He was arrested perhaps a week after everyone else. That's and right. He confessed. And allegedly so did Tiffany Adams.
Right, grandma.
The alleged mastermind. She talked too. So, of course, if you're an attorney, you're going to try to get those statements thrown out as coerced, as they didn't have counsel, and you're going to do the best. But as I said, anyone that laid a hand on one of these 2 women, they cut no deal whatsoever, even though it may make the prosecutor's job that much easier. Your thoughts?
Yeah, you're thinking perhaps Cora Twombly, maybe rather than Tad or Paul or Cole, and that might make sense because they're much larger. They're able to overpower the ladies maybe, and so maybe they actually did the beating and throwing the bodies and actually did the physical stuff. That's a good point, because you really don't want, as a prosecutor, and as you're making this decision, who do you approach? Well, you got to figure out who's got the least amount of liability, who's got the most of the people that actually hit her with the stun gun, beat them over the head, actually dug that hole, threw them in that freezer and put them in there and then buried them. And I think that's mostly the guys in this case. You're right. Paul Grice may be, depending on what forensic evidence we have showing, excuse me, what he did, he may not be a good candidate. You got to look around for somebody, like you say, who probably did not actually physically beat these poor ladies. Absolutely.
And Mike, perhaps if you're a really strong prosecutor, and with the evidence being what it is, the amount of evidence they have, they may say, "I'm not offering anyone a deal."
Yeah,
they're all going for murder first degree, and the deal in this case could be like, okay, Cora Twombly, and I'm just using her as an example. We'll take the death penalty off the table for you, but you're going to have to testify against everyone.
And you're going to
else.
do life, right?
And you're going to do life in prisons. But we'll just take the death penalty off the table. And if she balks, or whoever the prosecutor may offer that type of deal to balks, they could say, okay, we're going for the death penalty with you too. Thank you very much. Go back to your cell. Right. And that's the reality. I want to play this from News Nation, and this was in regards to the court appearance yesterday of all 5 of these defendants.
People charged in the killings of 2 Kansas moms back in court in the Oklahoma Panhandle today. Each of them facing first-degree murder and kidnapping charges in connection to the deaths of 27-year-old Veronica Butler and 39-year-old Jilian Kelley. Their bodies were found buried in a pasture 2 weeks after they disappeared in late March. The 2 women had been on their way to a supervised visit with Butler's children, who at the time were living with their grandmother, Tiffany Adams, and an ongoing custody dispute between Adams and Butler over those children is believed to be central to this case. So let's bring in senior national correspondent Brian Enton, who has covered this story extensively. He is live now in Texas County, Oklahoma. So Brian, what did we learn in court today?
Yeah, Nicole, it's always interesting coming to these court proceedings in Texas County, Oklahoma for this case, because of the way it all starts. About a half an hour before, there's intense security. They lock down the parking lot, and you see them walk all 5 of the suspects into court. And that happened once again today. One by one, they would pull the car up. They would take the suspects out. You see Grandma Tiffany.
I just want to comment on that. Any courthouse or any correctional facility where you allow the defendant that much exposure is bad security, because really what they should be doing is the defendant should be pulled into a fenced-in, locked area, and then walk a very short distance, not go into a parking lot accessible to the public, and then walked along. Dangerous, very poor security. And I don't care if you do it one at a time, it still is not good security. And it's not the fault of the officers. It's the fault of the physical structure and the physical facility, that security was not built into the facility where they could pull into a fenced-in area and then have a very short walk into the courtroom. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Billy, because even if you don't have a huge walled off area where you could drive behind, where it's totally, invisible and impenetrable to any sort of firing from anyone like me trying to escape or looking for revenge, at least put some sort of physical barrier, even if it's just to block vision. It could be some sort of, like temporary wall, canvas wall or something that you could put up and just have it where the people are farther away. They can't visibly actually see the people coming and going. So if anybody wanted to harm them or take a shot at them, they wouldn't be able to see them behind, say, the screen. That was really important. And whoever the architect was, maybe they just never really thought of that. But absolutely, they should fix, especially now, seeing the vulnerability, because these people, you don't want them to be shot by anyone out from the public seeking revenge. You want them to be safe, because you've got to try them.
Mike, how about them trying to spring these people? How about a team comes in and tries to help them escape? These people are facing the death penalty. And, there's not, that this is gun country,
It is.
And right down the block, people that perhaps admire these people, people that may be family members of these people. So it's not too far-fetched. So we immediately saw the lack of security that was there. And again, it's putting the officers at great risk as well as the defendants.
Yeah, and you don't see supporting officers when that person's coming out handcuffed and the officer has them. Where are the other officers with, say, an M14 or some sort of flak jacket? And
Look at this picture here. The officer has his back to the other officer and the defendant. That's not heads up security.
Yeah, it's kind of lax. Let's just hope that nobody tries to do anything crazy, tries to break them free, or tries to mow them down. Because that's gonna be a slaughter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The Adams there, the alleged mastermind behind the whole crime, and they walked them in handcuffed and with bulletproof vests on. What was unique this time, though, and the judge said nothing like this has ever happened before in this courthouse, is they had the hearing for all 5 suspects at the very same time. So they were all in the courtroom together, which is a relatively small courtroom. There was a ton of deputies in there to keep everything secure. Victims' family members were there. And they decided that they were going to hold the hearing together. That's what the lawyers wanted, which is somewhat unusual. Normally, you see them separate suspects, even if it's a case tied together like this. That's what they've actually done in the past with the bond hearings. But this time they did it all together. Basically went over the evidence. They're still waiting on a ton of evidence. The defense said waiting to review it. They're still waiting on the medical examiner's report, which is really, really important. They still haven't received it. We haven't received it. We've been requesting it. We're told the latest we've heard is it's going to be 2 to 3 weeks. It's important because we still don't know how these moms, Veronica Butler and Jilian Kelley, died. We don't know the cause of death. We do know, based on all of our reporting, that it was a brutal killing, that they were not shot, that they were found inside a freezer about 10 feet beneath the ground. They were buried. And I've actually been out to that site where they buried the freezer, where the investigators say the suspects buried the women in the freezer, a remote area behind a farm. But it'll be very interesting to soon, apparently in the next 2 to 3 weeks, find out exactly how the women died. Next up will be a preliminary hearing, Nicole, and we're told that once again, all 5 suspects will be together for that hearing, which it's interesting to see because they're all in the courtroom together. They're looking at each other, and you have to presume they haven't seen each other since they were arrested, Nicole.
Yeah, and Brian, we're looking at that video now as those defendants were walked into the courthouse. I know you in the past have had an opportunity to speak to the families of these victims at the center of all this. Were any family members in court today?
Yeah, they were. Jilian Kelley's dad, one of the victims, he was here again today. He actually had a T-shirt on with Jillian's photo on. And I mean, it's just so heartbreaking for them, especially for Jilian, who really didn't have much to do with it. Of course, the accusation is that this was a custody dispute between Grandma Tiffany and Veronica Butler, and that Jilian just happened to be there helping with the swap of custody. So really sort of in the wrong place at the wrong time. And her father has just been torn up. At one of the hearings, he actually sort of lashed out and started shouting at the suspects in court. But today, the entire hearing was much, much calmer.
All right, yeah, we will certainly see.
So, the big issues apparently in the hearing, of course, are discovery. And Mike, how tough is it, both for a prosecutor and the defense, for the defense to represent, well, each lawyer, each client has an individual attorney. Will the lawyers work as a team, or will the lawyers just not care about the other defendants and just vociferously advocate for their client? And how about the prosecutor? Now he's got to prosecute and prove that all 5 of these conspired, were complicit. What did each one of them do? And that is how a prosecutor has to put all the evidence together and match up the evidence to what occurred in this horrific crime.
Yeah, Billy, this is where organization is key. Having the lead prosecutor and someone second seating and maybe another assistant, because each individual defendant, you have to prove beyond reasonable doubt what their part was in the crime. You have to figure out you have to prove what we call the corpus delicti, who, when, how, that sort of thing for each individual person. So you got to know who used this, who went here, who had this weapon, who did this, and you have to then do that individually for everybody. But depending on how the trial goes, you're going to either have, somewhere between 1 and 5 people sitting at the defense table with between 1 and 5 attorneys opposing you, and you got to try to show that each individual person's actions all together, the sum of its parts was a conspiracy to kill 2 human beings, and that they did it. Not that there was any sort of misunderstanding. No, that everybody knew what they were doing, what their part was, what the ultimate goal was of the killing. And that's not easy to do when you have this conspiracy, because some evidence will be much greater, like, say, for instance, against Ms. Adams' grandma, because she did some things like bought the stun guns and bought the cell phones, the burner phones. But with others, it may not be. Some of the evidence and some of the reasoning and thinking behind the case comes from the Twombly's daughter. And so, but she can be very revealing about what went on afterwards, but you still have to corroborate those things that she said in order to bring it to as evidence before a jury. So that's a huge job for a prosecutor. And if you're looking at the defense side of things, you've got 5 different defense attorneys. They represent not the whole group. Each one represents only their client. And at certain times, there may be times where they'll work together in the beginning to demand discovery and things like that. But as they go through the discovery and they look to see how much evidence is actually present that pinpoints only their client and in this conspiracy, then they have to think, do I really want to sit in a courtroom with these other 4 people, or however they're going to divide it up? Or do I want a separate trial? Do I want to offer something to the prosecution in return for a lesser plea deal or a lesser punishment? So they'll work together. The defense attorneys work together in the beginning, but as they go through, they're only worried about their one client, and they're not worried about the others because they represent only each client. So yeah, there could be a split occurring in the near future with the defense. It's not going to be a monolithic defense. It's going to be 5 individual attorneys representing 5 individual people and their own individual, interests in the case. Very difficult case.
Mike, you mentioned and this is a really powerful piece of evidence. You mentioned the Cora Twombly's daughter, who was a witness against her and her husband Cole about them coming home after the murders were completed and making statements to her daughter. And she said, "Oh, what happened to them? Oh, they're not around anymore." Like that type of thing. And then apparently they asked her to clean the pickup, which did have blood evidence in it. So her being a witness to this is very, very powerful. When you match that up with the physical evidence, very tough to defeat that.
Oh, absolutely. The moment she says she was asked by her mom to clean out the truck and maybe the trailer. Okay, that's a great statement. You could use that. However, you really can't use it until you have proof of that. So that actually was said. So you go to the trailer. Was there actually trace evidence inside the Chevrolet, the pickup truck that was towing that trailer? Is there any sort of blood evidence? Once you get like just one drop of blood of Miss Kelley or Miss Butler's blood there, on just one drop, all you need is one drop, that places them there, and it places the complaining witness's statement. You've now corroborated it, so now you can go forth with it. Without that corroboration, you've got a great story, but it's got to be reliable. Relevance and reliability for each piece of evidence must be established. And so you can establish the reliability of a statement through corroboration of physical evidence. If there's, just like I say, one drop of blood, then what that daughter said has been corroborated, and that will be really powerful evidence for a jury to hear.
Absolutely. Rock Chalk True Crime. Lots of rockers in here. Love it. I headed to the Colorado after hearing still adjusting to altitude. Rock Chalk and all the followers of Rock Chalk True Crime, thank you so much for showing up here, for supporting Police Off the Cuff. And again, if you're not subscribed, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell, and hit the like button. And some of you new people, if you want to contribute to us financially, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels. We also have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels. And our YouTube channel membership is growing by leaps and bounds. And Rock Chalk, thank you for all that you do, especially in this case. It's really pretty crazy, this case. I want to go again to a little video from, again, this time from News Nation, talking about some of the new evidence that they have in this case.
Producer Allison Weiner has been scouring through the documents today. She joins us. What have you found?
It's crazy. I mean, this story and it does answer some of the questions that we've had since the beginning.
Notably, how were they killed?
Yeah. More than that, it also tells us that the police were onto them pretty quickly and doing a lot of work with search warrants. This is basically what was released today. And the defense had moved to try to seal these search warrants, and the judge wasn't having it.
How were the police tipped off early? Why were they tipped off early?
I think that there were witnesses to different things. Different trucks were different places, but I think they were all so tipped off because this is a custody battle. It was a brutal custody battle, and it was getting nastier and nastier. So I think the first suspects, you go right to Grandma Tiffany.
All right, investigators.
The mastermind.
Right. And in fact, there was a court hearing that was scheduled for just a few days after the women were murdered that was supposed to possibly shift custody back to Veronica Butler, one of the victims.
That's the day they were arraigned, too.
Yeah.
On these charges.
How ironic.
Yeah.
Okay. Investigators say there were items belonging to both women that were found in one of the suspects' vehicles. What exactly did they find?
They found the iPhones. And their iPhones, and
both women's iPhones were found in whose vehicle?
In Twombly's vehicle.
Okay.
And one of the defendants' vehicles. The problem with this case is if you keep, there are 5 defendants, so it gets a bit confusing when you start talking about everybody. But basically, Tiffany Adams, who we were calling the mastermind, there were other people involved, and everybody was working together. So there are a lot of different vehicles involved, and different things are in different places. There were items that were not related to the victims found in that freezer. There were things, found at a lot of different locations. So you see the police really trying every single way to get the evidence that they need, and they got a lot.
Okay, the documents show a stock trailer was seized from Mr. Twombly's property.
Yes.
He claims it wasn't his.
It wasn't him that claims it was a family member who claimed that it wasn't his.
That it didn't belong to him, but something was found inside there as well. What?
Well, they actually saw things that looked like blood stains, and in the affidavit, you see that they are using these wet swabs. That's what they use to get blood off.
Right.
So you can kind of extrapolate from the fact that they're using a certain technique. This is the trailer that everybody thought was used to transport these women from the car area where they were first abducted to the place where they were buried, which is on Jamie Beasley's property.
Okay.
So the vehicle obviously will have a lot of potential DNA and blood because they were found with a lot of, blood on their
There was
clothing.
a lot of blood found at the scene of their car. One of the suspects apparently talked quite a bit in the time between the crimes and the time he was arrested. What did he say?
Well, this was the suspect number 5, Paul Grice.
He was arrested much later than the first 4.
Yes, and he had time to go about town and chat with people. So it was just, you sort of just go, why? But the first time he was talking to a friend of his, and he actually said, do you know a guy that if someone wanted to leave the country, that he would help them do that? He also apparently, or
go
allegedly,
to Mexico, right?
Go to
he
Mexico,
was specific about it.
Yes, he was specific about it. And he also said, wanted to know about how long DNA would last if it was in the dirt, underground, 15 feet down. And they were buried.
That's specific?
That's specific. And that's what the affidavit says. Now, we have to always keep in mind that these affidavits are done by the police.
Right.
So we haven't heard the side of the defendants. I don't know.
He also had an injury.
He had an injury. We kind of knew about it because it was all over that he had a cut. But the FBI went to visit him. I call it kind of the OJ situation, because they went to visit him and he said he had cut it, like working on his truck. The friend testified to the police that he had cut it a different way. So he has different conflicting, statements on how he got the injury. It's a bandage right pinky, but he was seen at an Easter celebration the day after they were murdered with a bandage on.
Yeah.
Which often happens when people are stabbing people.
Do we know why he was arrested so much later?
You can tell because they're busy looking into where he was and checking phones. And they also have this witness he spoke to. So they got a great deal of evidence in the period between when the other defendants were arrested and he was finally arrested. They were busy working it because you see them looking for stuff.
Yeah, and it's clear
Looking for evidence.
A lot of people turned witness for the state in this, for the police. People reported what they saw, what they heard. All right, Allison Weiner, thanks so much.
So, Mike, a tremendous amount of evidence. And there's evidence there that Paul Grace spoke. And asking people these questions, how can I get to Mexico? How long does DNA last underground? Dude, are you kidding me? Basically forever, but like, oh yes, it's just going to disappear and dissipate over time. But questions that implicate him and, are great statements for a prosecutor to present in court.
It's consciousness of guilt. And thank you for letting me say that, because that's what it's all about. He's showing in his statements that he's very aware of his legal liability over what had happened. I need to get to Mexico. Do you know somebody that can get a man to Mexico really quickly? Can you tell me how long? What do you think DNA lasts? I mean, you hear about DNA all over the place. How long does that stuff really last underground if it's like 15 feet, buried 15 feet below the ground in mud? What are you doing? Like, it's amazing, and I'm thankful that he's that unaware of the consequences of his actions in terms of spilling the beans. But that's total consciousness of guilt. An innocent person wouldn't be asking about DNA and getting to Mexico really fast. Absolutely not. So I'm glad he said what he said, and that reveals that his ability to think about his awareness of what his liability is. He's talking about it for a particular reason, because he wants to know how in deep is he in this plot. Yeah.
Mike, when you look at these 4 defendants on the screen, Tiffany Adams, Tad Cullum, Cole Twombly, Cora Twombly, and then number 5 here. And here's a picture with all 5 of them in it, or thumbnail. You ask yourself, why would people that had no axe to grind in this case conspire to kill these 2 women because Tiffany Adams was involved in a custody dispute with Veronica Butler, the mother of her grandchildren? Why would everyone else throw their life away to help solve, in a nefarious, ridiculous way, Tiffany Adams' problem?
I've seen a lot of reviews, and people have said some really amazing, good stuff in the chat. And the only thing I could think of, and from what I was thinking and what I've gotten ideas from a lot of other people, is that perhaps the only person is Grandma and her boyfriend, who may have had some sort of legitimate reason to hate their daughter-in-law because she's going to take the grandchildren back and go from Oklahoma to Kansas. And the Twombleys have no axe to grind in this whatsoever, and neither does Paul Grace. However, Grandma may have convinced them that their grandchildren have been the victim of SA, and that the state doesn't care, and the state is demanding in 2 weeks' time, like the middle of April, that there's going to be a hearing, and most likely the children will be returned to their mother in Kansas, and she's irresponsible, and she exposes them to SA, and therefore also thinking that the government stinks, the government's terrible, we don't recognize the government, we don't recognize the judge's authority over us because we are sovereign citizens. So maybe this deadly cocktail of the grandmas pleading with people who are already leaning to dislike the government, and then throwing in possible allegations of SA against her, the grandchildren, in some really weird, twisted way. Maybe they thought what they were doing was going to save the grandchildren. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I'm thinking that maybe how in their warped minds that they were thinking.
Yeah, because the elephant in the room is also, don't forget, they were part of a group called God's Misfits.
Right.
And supposedly they met once a week. They were somewhat anti-government. Did somehow Tiffany Adams convince the other four that this is nefarious activity on behalf of the government, because they're not coming to my defense, and therefore will you come and help me do this? And that's one of the ways I could think of, if they were really all that entrenched in this God's Misfits group. Perhaps they were even brainwashed to do these things, and perhaps Tiffany Adams was a leader of these guys, that and they followed her. Powerful. Supposedly she and Tad Cullum are people of means. Apparently they have some money. And could that have been also why the other defendants in this case decided to help out Tiffany Adams with her problem and throw their entire lives away by conspiring to murder Veronica Butler and Jilian Kelley? I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
It doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people who have not lived down there, who don't know these people. But, there are people who are susceptible to being led around by someone who's a very passionate speaker. You could see dictators in the world. You could see religious leaders and things like that. And maybe people are led astray. I think the idea that they're part of a group that is anti-government anyway to begin with, they may not think very highly of any sort of court orders that a grandma has to bring her children into court and fight over possession of her own blood grandchildren with a mother who's very incompetent and who's going to allow these children to be victimized. And they're already leaning in that direction, and therefore just give we might not think she's very charming. We might not think that she has much to offer these people, the Twombleys, but maybe there was some other material assurances that they would be taken care of. I don't know. Maybe she has some sort of charm with the way she talks about them. I don't know. But, hopefully someone like, say, Paul Grice or someone, or Ms. Twombly, will break and give all the inside dope on the inner workings of this group and how five people came to view this situation as needing a correction. And the correction was multiple killing. I really would love to see one person break away from the others. I'm hoping for that, because that helps us and helps the true crime community and all people who have no emotional involvement, have no idea who these people are. We're not prejudging them. How it all came about, because it's a really weird, seemingly inexplicable situation. Really dangerous.
Mike, one of the things also is that even if you look at the photos of Tiffany Adams when she was arrested, I apologize for not having a solo one-on-one photo of her, but she didn't look good. She looked like she perhaps had a drug problem. I don't know if that to be true, but if you look at her now, she looks healthier than hell right now, and she looks years younger. So I have to assume she was living a hard life, and even though she had money, maybe she was a drug abuser.
Yeah, people don't realize that drug abusers just don't live in the poorer sections of town or on the Upper West Side or Upper East Side of New York with their recreational drugs. No, drug addiction in families suffer through it, towns suffer through it. Drug addiction is rampant in the United States, and it affects everyone. It affects families, and I'm sure at least in every family, there's at least one person who is suffering from it in every state of the union, in every town, village, big and small, city, big and small. And it's very common. It's not uncommon. And for someone in their 50s, like grandma, that might seem strange, but you don't know what life she has led and when did she start, that sort of thing. So it's very possible that she has been a user. We don't know for sure, but it wouldn't shock me whatsoever. Not at all.
Yeah, I actually was able to. There is her arrest
There it is.
photo. So that I don't think she looks too good in that photo as compared to how she looks now after she's been in jail for a couple of months. You eat regularly, you sleep regularly. What do they say? Three meals a day and a cot.
Right, 3 hots in a cot.
Three hots in a cot. That's right. I forgot
Right.
that little rhyme that we used to
Oh, yeah.
say. But but that's neither here nor there. But she is apparently the leader of this group. How others in this group just threw their lives away to help this woman. Rock chalk true crime. Oh, drug dealers start using their products they're selling. My opinion. Well,
Yeah.
Rock chalk, is that an allegation that perhaps Tiffany Adams was selling, and that would potentially include then her honey there with the ZZ Top beard, Tad Cullum. I don't know. I haven't heard that allegation, but she certainly looks like, from her arrest photo, that she was doing something that wasn't good for her. Let's put it that way, Mike.
Right. Yeah, Billy. No one looks good in an orange jumpsuit with a scale behind them. Nobody looks good. And so maybe Paris Hilton. I think her picture looked good. She looked like she had her hair and makeup done for her picture. But other than that, no one looks good. It always looks bad. And when you see that picture, it's burned into your mind. Yeah, it just seems rather strange that this occurred. And
Absolutely.
it's not like they took the kids or they we could understand, you and I could understand, and people in the true crime community could understand if grandma took the 2 children and fled because she felt that the children would be vulnerable with their mother. It wouldn't be a good thing to do, but we could at least understand it. And we'd be like, oh, okay, terrible family dynamics and things like that. But this is so far beyond the pale of excuses that I think that's the hard part, that you can't wrap your head around this. You really can't.
Absolutely not. Deb Galloway, the drug dealers that last the longest never do what they sell. What's another little limerick? Don't get high on your own supply, right? And
That's right.
that's true. But this
right.
area sounds like there's a lot going on in this area. Emily Flotilla, Brian Enton was brought to the dump site at night by a local, and a big black pickup shone their lights straight into the vehicle at them. His guide said, "We're out of here now." Yeah, I'm sure. Rock chalk, should be more search warrants. I see there should be more search warrants. We have not. Yeah, I think there will be, but this case is at its infancy, and they already have lots of evidence. Kansas, 66 county, large land area, but less than 21,000 population. Wealth tied up in land isn't liquid or even semi-liquid like stocks or a vacation home. No land equals no farm equals no income. Well, thanks for the education, Kansas 66, because we don't live in an area like that. But let me go back. Deb Banfield spoke about this. Let me see if I could pull up Banfield here. Hang on one second. I'm having a little problem here. Let me see. Here we go. I got Banfield ready to come on. Here we go. You guys don't realize I have to be able to walk, chew gum, and everything else all at the same time. Here we go.
And now that you have 5 people charged in a conspiracy, those 2 women said it's going to be Cora. She'll flip. Do you have any thoughts in the dynamics of this crime as to what's going to happen, what's been happening behind the scenes?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Ashley. And I just found that video and your statements about what happened in court today fascinating, especially with the defense attorney. So my take on that was knowing that Cora looked to be the weakest, right? And they all want to put up this strong front, right? This is a united team here, and Cora may be breaking. So this is just my supposition that may have been a subtle message by the defense attorney to buck up. You need to strengthen up and not be so emotional, and sort of get her angry by touching her husband, in a way that was inappropriate, and try to get her to kind of buck up and be strong. That's my kind of take on it. But sure, certainly, and this is what is fascinating in such a terrible crime, that they were able to get 5 people to agree to this heinous act, this murder of these 2 women, and to try to keep it quiet. I mean, it's hard to keep 2 people quiet, and having 5 people who are involved in this crime to the degree that they were, and then try to keep it quiet. It's next to impossible. And we already know that Paul Grice has made a statement, and perhaps Tiffany has as well. But Cora, as a mother, I think she probably has the most to lose, right? And I just want to speak to her daughter, because the affidavit tells us that after Cora came home, she disclosed what happened, right? She said, we have killed these women. And I really give a lot of credit to this young woman, because she had the moral thought to say, well, how are we reconciling this? Certainly, Veronica, you've, I guess, reconciled or rationalized that she's an unfit mother, but why did you have to kill Jilian? Like, what did she have to do with this? And then Cora goes the next step and tells her daughter that she needs to go clean the truck out, which the child knew at that point was involved in this homicide. So what she's done is made her daughter an accessory after the fact. So this is, to me, where the hypocrisy lies, right? These people are promoting themselves as heroes to these children, as saviors to these children. And she has now burdened her daughter with the knowledge that this group and her parents have now committed this heinous act, and could potentially be put to death or certainly serve life in prison. So she's got this now trauma that she has to live with. And she, in her own 16-year-old mind, is thinking, I'm involved in this thing now. They've made me go clean out this truck where there perhaps was blood in this truck.
That is interesting, but I also think that, so the poor kid, right? Because now she kind of knows, oh, dear God, what have I done? I've turned my mom in, and look what it was bigger than I thought. I'm 15, Sure. But I also think that as an investigator, couldn't you also, so this is sort of how I'm guessing your mind would work. You could go to Cora and pull her aside and say, hey, guess what? We're going to charge your daughter now. So what else do you want to do for us so that we don't charge your daughter? Yeah, is that happening? Do you assume that is a tactic?
As an investigator, that would be a tactic that I would use for sure, because this is your daughter now who is now involved in this conspiracy. You've drawn her into this conspiracy. You're responsible for what happens to her next.
Mike, we all agreed that
that's a good point.
That Cora Twombly is the weak link. However, she is involved as all hell, right?
Sure.
But to me, if I was a prosecutor, I want the people that actually laid hands on these 2 women that caused their deaths. I want them to be the first in line for the death penalty. So if Cora Twombly was there and will testify to that, all right, let's give her life without parole. Let's not go for the death penalty with her, because she's not going to be offered a sweet big deal. She's going to be offered breadcrumbs, because they have a lot of evidence in this case. And if you don't want to cooperate, Cora Twombly, well, guess what? You're going to get the death penalty too. And your daughter, we're thinking either we may charge her, accessory after the fact, or she can be a witness. But, you can perhaps send signals to your daughter that you want her to testify, or you can send the opposite and you're going to get the death penalty. But it's very difficult once someone goes on paper and tells the authorities what they've seen, what they know, for them to recant that. They could wind up getting arrested themselves. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Billy, I think that FBI profiler on Banfield was really good, because she pointed out the fact that you go after someone like Cora, who is a mom, because I was thinking Paul Grice, he's a dad, but you go after Cora, she's a mom, and you tell her, yeah, you know what, we can take our time. Your daughter gave us a lot of information, but she's a co-conspirator after the fact. She's an accessory after the fact. We're going to lock her up. And, if you don't care about your life, well, maybe you should care about your daughter's life and talk to us, because she's going to talk to us, because we're going to have her here. And accessory after the fact, we might not look for the death penalty for her, but we're going to look to do life behind bars without possibility of parole for your teenage daughter. She's going to be in prison for like the next, 75 years. Do you want to deal with that? So you always look for the person who's the most vulnerable, who's got the chink in the armor. And if you're a parent, it's, the biggest chink in the armor is either if you're married, it's a spouse, or it's a child, because you always want to protect your child. And so you appeal to the father or the mother's natural instincts to try to get them to flip. But really good thought by the FBI profiler, because it is true. She did give some really breaking, fantastic, incriminating information. But at the same time, she implicated herself as an accessory after the fact, doing material things to try to help this group get away with it by washing the truck, cleaning out the trailer, getting all the blood and everything else. That is a huge factor, because without that blood evidence, all it is a story. Not part of it, of the whole thing is a story. But good observations by that FBI profiler.
Absolutely. Sana Elise Hulf Johnson, thank you for the NOK 20 super sticker. Very much appreciated. And also Wayne Randalls, thank you so much for the $7.99 super sticker. Very much appreciate your support of the channel. It's this case, again, we've said it a million times, it's so baffling how people just threw their lives away and also think that they could get away with it. And that obviously, the consciousness of guilt that you always talk about, buying burner phones, buying what was it? The not just burner phones, tasers. They obviously planned out this crime. So that, premeditation, just absolutely crazy. Let me go back to the FBI profile.
Do you want to see her go to jail for something that you've done, you who purport yourself to be a savior of children?
Yeah.
So I can see why
Tiffany's
she was the one that
because listen, Tiffany's son has an alibi. He was in a rehab. He was jailed. He was in rehab, and he wasn't there for any of this. But that doesn't mean you can't be a part of something. You can't be part of planning something. And I wonder if there's still, look, we got 5, and that's a lot. But do you think there's a possibility we may end up with more, or do you think the charging's done now that we're at preliminaries?
I think it's hard to say, and this is another fascinating aspect of this, that they said so many incriminating things to other people who weren't directly involved in the homicide, right? You have Beasley, who had the property, and Callum goes to him and says, hey, they're looking at me for the disappearance of these women. I used the skid steer on your property. Make sure you tell them that I was just doing dirt work for you. And then there's another gentleman where Grice goes to him and says, hey, how do I get to Mexico? And what is about the resiliency of DNA testing, right? So they're making these incriminating statements to other people. And certainly Wrangler Rickman, the father, he does have an alibi. However, the information in the affidavit disclosed that he had heard conversations from Tiffany about getting rid of Veronica. So he was at least aware before the crime happened that this was the intention moving forward.
Yeah, well, it is such a fascinating story. I just want to be Brian Enton right now in that courtroom because I wouldn't know who to look at first, second, or longer. I wouldn't know who to gaze at, and I do love doing that. Kathleen Canning Mello.
So, they're getting the eyes inside the courtroom. We've been to these trials like these. This is a very complicated case to prosecute if you are a prosecutor. And, right from day one, we're saying who's going to cut the deal. And then when we heard that Paul Grice was talking when he was arrested, that's not going to help him. If anything, that's going to hurt him. And supposedly when Tiffany Adams was arrested, she gave it up too. So, when detectives take statements, it's not just, oh yeah, I did it. They get deep into the weeds. They match the evidence up to what you're saying. They vet what you're saying and they compare it to the evidence so that if you're lying, they can question you upon it to make you tell the truth or to guide you towards the truth. So Paul Grice, I'd say he's finished. Tiffany Adams absolutely is finished. Tad Cullum and Cole Twombly, I think they're all going to get the death penalty. I think the only one that has any opportunity, any chance to cut a deal, and that's going to be life in prison without parole, is Cora Twombly.
Yeah, Billy, you're in good company because the FBI agrees with you. The FBI profiler, yeah, she's very, very vulnerable. I'm thinking, the only reason why I'm thinking Paul Grice is because he's a dad and he's not married or related in any way to the group. With the other four, they're married to each other. But yeah, Cora is, as you point out, a very vulnerable person too. And, she better have some, if she is approached and she does approach, her defense attorney approaches the prosecutor or something like that, she better have a lot of meaningful information that they don't have. If she's just going to sit there and spin a tale and try to, extricate herself from it and say, okay, this is really what happened, and they can't back it up, and her statements are actually contradicted by other information that they have, they're just going to say, thank you very much. We don't need you. But she better have something worthwhile because they've got all five of these people, nailed to the wall, and it better be really valuable. And she better make a good witness. She better sound like she's telling the truth, because if not, and again, as you say, the best thing that they are probably going to offer her is life behind bars without possibility to parole. And the fact that your daughter, does not get arrested for any sort of accessorial conduct for her testimony. That's about the best thing you can give. So depending on how she views life, her life and her daughter's life, how she values it, we'll see. But yeah, she's very vulnerable at this point.
Mike, that's a great point. And if she is a good mother, and you don't know if she is, how about sparing your daughter from getting prosecuted? And look at the position you put your daughter in. Okay.
Exactly.
Now you want to cooperate? Okay, sit down.
Right.
We want to know everything. First of all, we want to know how this whole plan was hatched, how you guys had meetings, how you conspired, what each person did from your perspective. And we want to let you know that we know a lot of what you're going to tell us already. So if you lie, the whole deal is off and you're going for the death penalty. Wow. Powerful negotiating tool that the government has to get a potential, well, this is a perpetrator, but to get her to cooperate so that they build a much stronger case against the other five, actually. So when we look at these five people, and let me get the picture, of course. When we look at these five, and we realize that Cora Twombly, the second person from the left, she may be the only one that has anything to offer that to cut a deal, because Tiffany's the mastermind. Paul Grice already gave it up, and so did Tiffany. Tad Cullum, what I really would like to know is who physically committed these murders, because obviously those are the people. And was it 2 people? Was it 3 people? Was it 4 people? And if Cora Twombly actually physically committed these murders, all deals are out. All deals are off. We're going for the death penalty against all 5. So, Mike, your thoughts, your final thoughts, actually, Mike.
Yeah, I agree. If you're going to give any sort of deal to anyone, it's got to be somebody without the actual blood of those poor ladies on their hands. And so if Cora or Paul actually took part in the beating of these women, the tasering of these women, the dragging them off, smashing them in the head, tying them up, throwing them actually into the freezer, then the deal is off. And you know what? If the prosecutor may have a good case where they're not even interested in offering anybody the death, a bargain for life behind bars, some sort of plea bargain. And I do actually hope that's the case, because you do not really want to see, as a person who believes in justice, you do not want to see somebody who's got blood on their hands walking away with a sweet deal. So everybody, just keep informed in this case. We'll keep you informed in this case, and pray for Veronica Butler, and pray for the victims here.
Yes, we always like to. When we speak about the case, we always want to remember, of course, that this case is about the victims. Mm-hmm. Veronica Butler, age 27, Jilian. And Jilian Kelley, age 39. That actually had nothing to do with this case other than escorting Veronica Butler to this meeting. And for that, she paid with her life. And apparently, Jilian Kelley had 5 kids, or has 5 kids. And so horrific, horrific. And Cindy Fenney, Cora didn't care about her daughter as she used her to clean the truck.
You're right.
Yeah, that gets her daughter involved. You're right. That absolutely puts her daughter in. However, right away, the daughter went to law enforcement and told them what she knew. So that could get her out of the trick bag, as Phil likes to say, right away, because she was cooperating and showed that she had absolutely no complicity in this. And she reported what her parents had said to her. So that, I would think, on 100%, this young witness, who was 15 at the time, which also makes her a juvenile, we would hope that she has an attorney or is being advised by an attorney, and they have some written agreement, some written deal that she will not even be considered to be prosecuted, but in return for her testimony against these conspirators, these 5 conspirators in this case, who up on this screen. The Kansas Moms case, 5 misfits in one crowded courtroom. The hearing was yesterday in the Kansas Moms case. Mike, that's about it. That's our coverage today. Mike, you have one last word to say, or you've pretty much covered it?
Just please keep everybody tune in. And we'll keep you informed, and we'll keep you abreast of any breaking news in this case. As soon as we hear something, you'll hear something.
Absolutely. Folks, I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. Thank you so much for tuning in today. As Mike just said, we'll keep you apprised when new information is available in this case. Until then, have a great day, and God bless.
Take care.
One episode just ain't enough.